This episode of The Harmonious Gentleman is brought to you by our friends at Blind Man Brewing, the most awarded brewery in Canada. They brew innovative, high-quality, and flavorful beer while working for sustainability through their green initiatives. Blind Man Brewing hosts all kinds of harmonious fun at their beautiful tap room in Lacombe, Alberta. Live music, cornhole leagues, wonderful tacos, or a refreshing pint with friends. There's always something fresh and tasty at Blind Man Brewing.
Well, if podcast episodes were the size of contract in millions that Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat signed for 3 years, you'd know this has to be episode 163 of The Harmonious Gentleman. I'm Chris.
For 3 years.
You're Graham. And yes. It was a 3-year contract.
Wow.
But 163 million, guys.
That's not bad.
That's over 3 years or per year.
It's over the course of 3 years. Okay. So total for 3 years.
It's okay then.
Which is dwarfed maybe by Ohtani's record contract. But that seems a lot for a basketball player I've never heard of. Have you guys heard of Bam Adebayo?
Yeah.
Have you?
Like 30 seconds
ago. Is he a
ago.
superstar? Is he as famous as his contract would suggest?
No, but I'm not surprised. Like, basketball is a superstar sport, so you got to pay those guys the money. And it always pans out.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially for the Heat. Actually, sometimes it does for them.
Sometimes, yeah.
The original super team?
Yeah,
Maybe.
Well, no.
Well, weren't they the first team that collected all the free agents and then went for a title?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, that's
know.
Tyler.
I'm Tyler, guys, and I don't know very much about basketball.
Whenever we go into sports, this doesn't work. It never works.
We lose half our listeners.
Yeah.
But this is not a sports episode, so
okay.
Keep on listening.
I was misinformed.
Yeah. Should I read an email?
Please
yes.
do.
This is from new listener Mike. He says, it was awesome to read... Oh, shoot. That's my response to new listener Mike.
I'm going to leave it
That's
in.
old podcaster Tyler.
It was a really good email. I should have just read.
Just read your response.
Okay, this one's from Mike. It says, good day, gents. Short-time listener, first-time emailer. Your last episode ended with you asking for ideas. Not sure how political you want to get, but what a better topic to challenge our societal harmoniousness than Alberta politics right now. It's become quite disheartening listening to the discourse, even more so from people you think you know well. Sometimes it seems easiest to just ignore, but perhaps that's not the right choice either. Otherwise, you may find yourself in a province about to secede from the country. And he goes on. It's really well written, but I'm just going to highlight a few things. He says, the issue seems so big. Like, what can one uninfluential conflict avoider type guy do about it? Overwhelming. But then I need to remind myself, perhaps I can make a difference, if only for one other person in my small sphere. And then he gives us some recommendations, specific podcast episodes about the upcoming referendum. And then, I don't know if you guys have seen this website, Alberta Referendum. DUMB, 2006.ca. No. It's kind of like a joke website modeled after the actual website released by the government. And then he even gave us a confession. But his confession I'll read. I think I have his permission. It says, I only heard about your podcast early 2026. I'm attempting to play catch-up, listening from the beginning. The confession is I'm already at episode number 120.
What? Mike, impressive.
I know, but he does say it's a bit embarrassing. But I think it's
impressive. Don't be embarrassed about that.
He should be further along.
But we should send him a shirt, a hat, a pin, and a sticker.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Do we have
great
that
email.
stuff?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
Great email.
And I mean, quite timely considering what we just released. Our conversation with Nate Pike last week, very Alberta politics focused, and yeah, I feel the same way as Mike does. I think I want to be able to do something and don't know what sometimes.
Mike, you said something that interested me, which was as a conflict avoider. Maybe that's what all the conflict avoiders are doing, is just not taking this on, and all the conflict... What's the opposite? Seekers, yeah, are the ones leading the charge here.
Yeah.
And I'm currently on Alberta Referendum 2026, and it's already funny. So good recommendation.
Yeah. Cool. Speaking of recommendations, you want to do some real quick ones before we introduce our guest today?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll start?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to recommend sitting in a hammock. It's that season where it just feels like summer. If you can find a hammock and lay and look up at the trees as they're budding and just lay and look at the sky, you'll forget all of Alberta politics problems just for moments at least.
Nice.
So that's my recommendation. Get a hammock, set it up, lay in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one.
Top that.
I will
good.
top that. There's a band called Broken Social Scene,
Okay.
and they put out a new record like last week, and it's called Remember the Humans, and it is just awesome. So have you heard it yet, Tyler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
believe
good,
I
yeah?
texted you at like 6:30 in the morning the day it came out.
Oh, did
Wow.
you? Okay.
I think so.
Like, just keep an eye out for this.
He was on the ball. Maybe I feel bad now that I forgot that it was you. But they had released the singles, and like sometimes the singles they release are like the best part, right? But actually, it's all awesome. Like the entire thing is great. So
Nice.
yeah, check it out. Remember the Humans, and all their albums are good too. So yeah,
I'm going to recommend Blind Man Brewing's Dream Machine. If you haven't had that for a while, it's kind of a fun one to come back to.
it's the season for it, I think.
It's the season for it. We're at Blind Man recording this episode, and it's really good, the first few sips.
Yeah.
And Jared, do you
Yeah.
want to recommend something?
Yeah.
Also,
well, this
welcome
is
here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's good to be down in Lacombe again. I mean, this is kind of a confession too.
Okay.
Look, there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think a lot of us are looking for different things at the grocery store these days. Some of us are facing the budget crunch, and others of us we're getting up there, and health is a concern too. So if you're like me and you look at the sticker price of even ground beef and you think, I can't afford that, here's a little trick. Why not try ground turkey? I've tried this. Ground turkey, and then you cook it at the end with beef broth.
Whoa.
Leaner, cheaper, tastes just the same. Great for chili,
Really?
great for tacos.
Definitely trying this.
Yeah.
That's a really good recommendation.
Just had it
Nailed
last
it.
night. Thanks, man.
Sweet.
So just to follow up, how much broth are you putting in? Like just when you're mixing,
Okay.
like let's say your taco seasoning or something, you do
Yep.
it with the broth?
Well, okay, now I'm getting in trouble with the sodium police because I don't use like the diluted broth. I use the concentrated broth, and I use one of those little cartons, the whole thing in there. Boil it down.
Okay.
Add the seasoning in at the end. Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good one.
What a harmonious tip.
Stopping at the grocery store on the way home.
When you said here's a tip, I thought you were going to say switch the labels or something. But
Just tuck it under your arm.
Why is this turkey so dark? Yeah.
Okay.
you guys want to jump into talking about democracy and stuff?
Yeah.
I really do.
I see you're
Is that
taking Mike's request really seriously.
Yeah, we're getting on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of intimidated, Jared, because I was reading some of your articles, and they're really good. Like,
Well-
really good.
Thanks, man.
Like-
It takes a bit to, as I said to you in the pre-show here.
Yeah.
we were pre-gaming.
Yeah, we were.
I said, you should see my drafts folder. It takes a lot to distill down everything
Oh.
that's going on in this province right now.
Yeah.
And to do it in a way that makes sense to people. So that means a lot to me. That it actually does resonate with you, because that's
Yeah,
that's
I've
part
shared
of my
it.
job.
I've shared it since with others because I think it's like you say, it's very readable, but informative and clear. So I love it. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
we should probably take a break before we fully introduce Jared, but I had to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
This segment is brought to you by Cilantro and Chive. Delicious, creative dishes, a huge variety of locally crafted drinks, and with locations in Lacombe and Red Deer, they're making two communities more awesome. Check out their mouth-watering Burger of the Month, a rotating menu item that satisfies your hunger and supports local initiatives and charities. Cilantro and Chive, fresh, simple eats.
So, Jared, I'm going to put you on the spot. You have to introduce yourself. Okay, so the question is, who is Jared Wesley, according to Jared Wesley?
Well, I go by Jared. I'm a lucky husband, a really lucky dad of two daughters that are in elementary school now in Edmonton. I'm originally from a small town in Manitoba called Minnedosa, and I grew up there in Treaty 1 territory for most of my life, but I celebrated my Alberta-versary, I think, 7 years ago now.
Okay.
It's actually a term. If you spent
didn't know
more,
that.
yeah, there's so many people from outside Alberta that come to live here. It's Albertaversary is when you spent more time in Alberta than anywhere else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think I may have just had mine, actually.
Well,
I'll think about it.
congratulations. There's
Or I'm getting close, at least. Yeah.
the traditional meal is steak and cake, just so you know.
Steak makes sense.
Yeah.
After the referendum, will you qualify for healthcare?
We can get into that. Yeah. No, and I'm right now I hang my hat at the University of Alberta, but I have misspent youth in government. I spent 5 years under 5 premiers in intergovernmental relations and cabinet coordination back, from 2011 to 2017. And before that, I worked under Gary Doer, former ambassador to the U.S. and premier of Manitoba. I did intergovernmental relations there too. So that's who I am.
So the next question that we like to ask is, where do you come from? Followed by, where are you going? So I guess, where do you come from in the sense, like, how did you get to what you're doing right now? Yeah,
it was a pretty long path. So I grew up in a small town in Manitoba. We were the only biracial family I knew of. I can count on one hand the number of black folks besides my dad that I saw growing up, and that definitely shaped me. So I like to say there were more stereotypes about black people than there were black people around where I came from. And then I moved out to U of A to do my university, back to Manitoba and back out to University of Calgary where I did my doctorate. And along the way, I just got really fascinated with how different the values and assumptions seem to be across these 3 provinces. So I spent most of my time trying to unpack that and understand why is Alberta politics seem to be animated by concepts like freedom, and whereas in Manitoba, where I come from, the buzzword seems to be moderation. Don't rock the boat, right? And so I spent a lot of time trying to unpack that. But to be honest, my most recent research was really around trying to understand if my whole childhood was a bit of a lie, right? Because the more I start to understand and unpack rural resentment here in Alberta and other places, I see a hard edge of xenophobia and anti-immigrant and, let's be honest, some white supremacy. And I got to be honest, I didn't see that growing up. So either it was happening behind my back and I didn't hear about it, or it didn't happen, and we need to expose that myth for what it is. So I'm spending a lot of my time just trying to figure out, what was my childhood as real as what I thought it was. Yeah.
So what's your, maybe this is a big question, but where do you want to go? Like, do you have aspirations for where to take this? Like, do you have any big changes in your path?
Yeah, you get to be my age. I'm mid-40s now, and one of my best buddies, he works in HR. He said when you get to be about that age, you stop asking what your next job's going to be and start asking what your last job's going to be. And I'm quite happy where I'm at. So I'd love to retire as a professor, probably a lot later than my wife would like me to. But. And in that sense, I don't want to spend my next 20 years writing articles and books that nobody's going to read. I want to spend time talking with folks like you and talking about politics in a way that makes sense to people. Because, a lot of people are disengaging because they feel like it's too divisive. They feel like they can't make a meaningful impact. And I feel like it's my responsibility. Taxpayers across Manitoba and Alberta paid a lot of money to send me to school to learn things, and I have an obligation to go back and help them to understand what's going on.
I don't know if this is a part of your research, but would you suggest that sentiment is growing? Has it always been that way, the disengagement piece?
I think everyday people are disengaging now to a larger extent. So, it's never a good thing for a democracy to have everybody engaged 100% of the time. That can be quite volatile, right? You want some level of what we call slack in the system, where there's some apathetic people who aren't paying attention. You don't really want them engaging. If I'm being honest, I think a lot of folks that think they know a lot about politics are getting engaged right now, but they don't really. And the folks that do actually know politics but don't have confidence in themselves are sitting it out. And that's part of our problem. Yeah.
And are you teaching quite a bit right now?
I teach one a year.
Okay.
That's a question my mom asks all the time. She's a former teacher too. She's like, so how many courses are you teaching? No, I work in administration quite a bit, so it means I spend less time in the classroom. But this is my classroom, right? And so instead of sitting in front of a lecture hall of 300 students, I find myself writing for Albertans and for Canadians.
Yeah, and I guess we've talked to other people who teach in universities, and I'm curious about what you're seeing out of young people in your courses. I know you say you teach one a year. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you notice about the kids essentially in your courses? Have they changed over the last number of years?
Yeah, I'm actually seeing a lot more people who are curious about politics showing up to our classes, and I think that's a credit to what our department's been doing to try to not make a political science degree the goal, but rather come in and take politics 100, not even politics 101, but politics 100, right? Just to get your bearings as a citizen, not a big C citizen, but a small C citizen. And some of our classes that we're launching, we got a new undergraduate online certificate that we've launched. And you'd be surprised at what majors are most likely to take that. It's not political science students. It's actually psychology students and computer science students. So I think what's changing is that people are seeing the world around them. They're confused by it. They don't want to be. And they want to engage in a meaningful way. And so that's part of the teaching that I do.
And is there a shift in values, like political positioning, I guess, like in young people? Yeah, I don't know because I don't ask them. I don't structure my courses or my assignments to do like a political litmus test. Yeah. But I also I'm a little bit not offended at your question, but I'm offended at some of my colleagues that say universities are filled with progressives and it's the woke academy and so on like that. And I just remind them, especially in business school, I can guarantee you that's not the clientele that we see. And maybe if you're not seeing them, you need to invite them into your classrooms. Right. And as a conservative myself, it's a little bit off-putting to say that folks like me have no place in the academy. Here I am, and we can do quite well, thanks. Yeah, cool. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was wondering, Bill 25 is something that schools are talking about, but I wonder at the university level what that might look like when it gets fully fleshed out for you.
Are we getting to the confession stage of the podcast?
Oh, we don't have to, and this is one of my confessions. I'm very, very bad at bill numbers. I can't retain them. So tell me what's Bill 25. Well, as far as I understand it, it's like the way we're talking about it, or at least the little bit I know about it. There's some censorship or prevention of bias. I think at an institutional level.
This is the one with the no flags in classrooms.
That's right.
That kind of thing. Yeah. I think that schools are an easier target in that way because the provincial government feels like they have more control over you than they do over us. But I do know that when ministers come in and speak at the University of Alberta, the first word out of their lips is neutrality. Okay. I even heard it put as bluntly by one advanced ed minister: if you folks want more money, because our budget's been cut 33% in 4 years, if you want more money, be more neutral. And so there is that kind of pressure. I will say this: we got the money this year, and we're no less neutral. So some level of pushback, I think, is respected by these folks. So continue to do what you're doing, teachers. Yeah.
Cool. So you've written a bunch of articles that caught my eye over the last little bit, and even in since we've started emailing back and forth about setting this up, I think I've replied a couple times but we could also talk about this one, and then you would reply, or this one, right? Like there's lots of things we could talk about. But one that I think I'd like to at least start with is it said drinking the sand was in the title. I think 3 rules for, maybe you can finish it, 3 rules for democracy.
3 rules for understanding democracy.
Democracy. So maybe just as a starting point, and to finish up this intro segment, can you explain what drinking the sand means?
Right. The overall message here is that, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, you folks are probably the same way. You catch yourself almost daily, if not weekly, saying, I don't understand what the hell this government is doing. Or I don't understand how the heck my neighbor can be flying. I think you folks talked about on your last podcast how they can fly an American flag. And I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And my message to folks is, you know what? That's not their fault that you don't understand them. And maybe we need to be a little bit more curious and try to unpack this and understand these kinds of things. And I say the same thing about democratic backsliding. It's a huge concept. It's a huge topic, and people's eyes kind of glaze over when you start talking about things like rule of law and gerrymandering. They don't know what some of those terms mean.
I'm a high school social
right?
science.
No, yeah, well, but
my students.
But I might be the first person to tell you this, but you're a little weird, right? Well, you're a little weird. You guys have a podcast where you talk about political issues, right? Yeah. And the folks that listen to this are also a little bit weird in that they're really engaged in this stuff, and we got to find ways to talk to those folks. Yeah. So I was thinking about it, and my mind went back to this 1990s movie called The American President, starring Michael Douglas and Michael J. Fox. And there's this scene in the show that I remember distinctly, and I keep coming back to it. I never really understood what it meant. Is it okay if I read the lines from it? I promise I won't.
Please do.
I'm a horrible impressionist, so I'm not going to do Michael J. Fox for you.
Please try.
But there's this scene in the movie where Michael Douglas is the president of the United States, and he's under all kinds of pressure to finally do something. He's sitting back. He's not really doing anything aggressive with his agenda, and his chief of staff, played by Michael J. Fox, his name is Lewis in the show, he corners him in the Oval Office, and he says this. He goes, "People want leadership, Mr. President, and in the absence of genuine leadership, they'll listen to anyone who steps up to the microphone. They want leadership. They're so thirsty for it, they'll crawl through the desert toward a mirage, and when they discover there's no water, they'll drink the sand." Powerful moment, right? And then Michael Douglas looks right back at the chief of staff, and he says, "Lewis, we've had presidents who were beloved, who couldn't find a coherent sentence with two hands and a flashlight. People don't drink the sand because they're thirsty. They drink the sand because they don't know the difference."
Oh, wow.
Poignant. Aaron Sorkin.
I was going to say, is
like,
that
Aaron Sorkin script. But I always thought that was a poignant moment, but I never really understood it until I started to think about the state of democracy in Alberta. And the way I translate this for us here today is that Albertans don't accept democratic backsliding because they like it. They accept it because they're overwhelmed, they're disoriented, and they're misled into thinking that it's normal, right? And this is deliberate. When we flood the zone with all of these actions to erode democracy, Albertans start to mistake power for leadership, and they mistake populism for democracy. And that's really what I spent my last few months thinking about and trying to communicate to Albertans.
Okay.
This segment is brought to you by the King's University in Edmonton, Alberta. Check out King's brand new Bachelor of Kinesiology degree. This integrative, highly practical health sciences program is about preparing you for careers in human performance, sports, and biomechanics. If you have a passion for movement and exercise, visit kingsu.ca/kinesiology.
Well, in your article that Tyler referred to about drinking the sand, you write about 3 simple rules, which I think when I look at them, I used to teach social studies too, so these things make sense to me, and I see that and go, yeah, this is the basics of what we need to be talking about when we're talking about democracy. But it is a great starting point, I think, for our listeners to hear. Do you mind just expanding on that or telling us what those are?
Yeah, I'm motivated in a lot of what I do by my kids, and in that sense, like, we do a lot of research on Albertans' public opinions and so on like that. And a lot of Albertans feel that way, and they're motivated by that. And I was trying to make sense of what's going on, because my daughter watches the news with us every night. She sees what's going on in the United States. But it's very, even for her, it's very bewildering, right? It's disorienting. Okay. So I was trying to think, how can I boil down, the essence of liberal democracy as we know it in Alberta and elsewhere into some simple rules to create kind of like buckets, so that when people see the flood coming, they can sort the water into these different areas, and it'll make sense to them. And it'll start creating patterns for them, so they don't have to pay attention to each and every one, but they can see that the rules are being broken, And so that was really the motivation behind it. And she's always my testing board. And these make sense to her in her student council elections.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I put it to her. I said,
good rules for that too.
Right? I mean, and if you're looking to build a constitution right now, if you had to start from scratch, I don't think you can come up with 3 better rules than this, right? So the first rule is that the rules matter. Everybody has to play by the rules, and there's no changing the rules just to benefit yourself or your friends, right? Second rule is people are in power, governments, need to make themselves accountable, right? And the third one is that that government, those people that make decisions, should govern on behalf of the whole community, not just their friends.
Right.
And when you put it that way, and you start looking back at the last decade in Alberta politics, you start seeing some really worrying signs. But that recognition is the first step to actually saying enough's enough.
Well, even just for anybody on any side of the political spectrum would agree on those rules. Like, who's going to disagree with any of that? That's a starting place.
Well, and at one time, I think we did all agree.
Yeah. But even now, someone who wouldn't agree with me, would they still at least agree with what you just outlined?
They wouldn't.
I don't know.
No?
They wouldn't. And recent, recent events, particularly around the voters list, the leak of the voters list publicly suggests that some folks don't believe that the rules apply to them.
Okay.
And let's just call a spade here.
Yeah.
The government has been changing rules to benefit their friends. And so not everybody believes in these things, but our research over the last 6 years, doing polling and focus groups at Common Ground Initiative, shows that Albertans believe in these things. Right?
Yeah, with the maybe another way of saying it would be that average Joe on the street would, in principle, believe in these things, right? But when you look at actions of the government and its friends, they clearly don't believe in it. But if I were to go up to my neighbors, I think they would.
I guess I would just say there's always been corrupt governments and people willing to do this, but I feel like the voters have had their say. Like, there'll be a scandal that will end a government. I feel like this government's done multiple things that would have ended a government 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
True?
Yes, but it's not voters that end governments. It's actually members of their own party.
Right.
So if you look at, for example, Alison Redford, whose scandal then was quite quaint compared to what we're seeing right now, right?
Sure.
I mean, government forging some manifests on government planes, building an apartment for her and her daughter. I mean, those were millions of dollars, not billions, like we're talking about with the corrupt care scandal, right?
Yeah.
But in those days, within 72 hours, the PC caucus had risen up and said, "We don't want you as leader anymore," and they turfed her, right? And so a big part of this problem is that government side MLAs are not behaving the way that our norms suggest that they should. And they're actually, it's actually quite sad. They're actually stripping themselves of the power to hold the government to account. Well, so I'll give you an example, right? So they're stripping their ability to hold the government to account by agreeing to things like time allocation, or what's called closure, where they shut down debate on pretty contentious issues, including the use of the notwithstanding clause, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk to an PC MLA from the 1980s and 90s, they would say, "There's no way I would remove my own power to do those kinds of things," right? And so the question becomes, how do we reach those MLAs who are ultimately the ones that are going to hold the government accountable, and make it more painful for them to go along with this than it is just to stay silent, right?
Yeah. The analogy you made at the beginning was that these 3 questions act as buckets to help sort, I think, the water that's coming towards you. Is the volume of water that's coming towards us higher than normal?
Yeah, and it's quickening.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is very difficult
That's
to
true,
keep
right?
up.
We're not imagining that?
No.
Like, that's true?
You're not. Like, our team is paid to pay attention to this stuff, right? And to try to catalog it. Yeah. And we have a Slack channel devoted to this. And I get notifications like every hour of something new that the government is doing, right? And so and that's by design to flood the zone. But also, the more that they start to strip away the checks and balances on their own power, the harder it is for folks to slow it down, right? Gerrymandering is a good example, right? The idea of redrawing electoral boundaries to make it harder for your opponents to win means that they have even less of an incentive than they do now to listen to voters because
Right.
they know it's probably not going to make a difference in the next election.
Yeah. This is I've heard a lot of people say distraction, right? They say this, what's the most recent one? But like time change, that whole discussion was a distraction from the gerrymandering that was happening, or this is happening so the government can do this. But I've read something that says it's not distraction, it's all just what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So do you agree, or is there some element of just like, look over here? Or is it there's no difference? Is it accurate to say they're distracting, or is it just they're doing so many things that we can't keep up with it?
Well, you have to keep in mind that one person's distraction is another person's big issue, right?
Yeah.
So if you have kids that are tweens or teenagers, this daylight savings time switch is going to make a big impact on your household and their mental health. So if that's a distraction, it still matters, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
My example would be the government seemingly, like the separatism movement. Like, I feel like the highest levels of government know damn well we're not separating. Like, that's how I feel. I feel like they know there's no way that's going to happen, but they love the idea that people can just go on and on about it, and they can stoke the fires, and people can fight about it. Like, that's what would be my distraction, where I think like they don't want to separate. Like, they
To what end? So that in the meantime they're switching other boundaries around?
Sure, whatever else. Sure, like things that will make democracy weaker.
Yeah, it's a bit of hubris, though, right? I mean, to think that
You can control that?
You can control that,
Yeah.
right? When there's clear evidence to the contrary.
Right.
Just ask David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of the UK, who thought he could manage internal party tensions and ride the dragon of Brexit.
Yeah, that's true.
And he got burned. And what's really discouraging is that I've talked to high-level UCP staffers. They are very well aware of the David Cameron example. The Premier herself has actually talked about David Cameron openly and said, but I won't make that mistake. Mm-hmm. So my worry is that they're really out over their skis on this. And they're not learning the lessons that we know about playing by the rules and making sure that, that they're listening to all Albertans, not just their friends.
In your opinion, is the risk that they're taking by potentially limiting their own term in office or whatever that is it like in the short term, is it to protect themselves or to give themselves more power, or what would when you break it down, what would the goal actually be?
So you have to be suspicious of any political scientist who starts to talk about politicians' motives.
Right, sure.
Because we're not in their head.
Sure.
Right.
Used to be a day where we'd have access to chiefs of staff and members of the Premier's office. This Premier's office is very tight.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to try to guess what's going through their minds as strategists. All I know is how all I can go on is what their behavior suggests. Mm-hmm. And I think the best predictor of what Danielle Smith will do is what Danielle Smith thinks will keep her in power. And I say that, and I'm not being disparaging. She's a politician. That's her job, is to get reelected.
Yeah.
The challenge is that her party is set up in such a way that small fringe groups have outsized influence over the leader. This was by design. They created, in Jason Kenney's words, the most grassroots party in Canadian history. And it's true. Every fall, the Premier is subject to a potential leadership review, which means that every fall they have to trot out a more and more radical legislative agenda to keep people's attention and to keep their job. Right? Yeah. And that's why we keep seeing this amping up and amping up. But Ken Bosencool, a former Harper strategist, put it best. He said, eventually, you get to the point where we're at right now, where Danielle Smith is either going to lose her job in the short term or in the long term, right? If she calls a separatist bluff and says, I'm not going to hold a referendum because of the voter list leak or because I don't think it's good for the country or for the Alberta economy, for whatever reason, the knives will be out, and they're already selling memberships to take her down in the next AGM in the fall, okay? But if she goes ahead with this and things go in the direction of many other similar exercises like Brexit, Albertans have a long memory. They won't. I don't think that they'll forgive her for that. And so I'm not here trying to tell you to feel sorry for Danielle Smith, but you asked the question, what are the strategic implications of this?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Those are the stark choices she faces. Do you want to lose your job now, or do you want to have a hope of keeping your job later?
And what's best for I get that she's thinking there's a short term and a long term for Danielle Smith, but what about Albertans?
Yeah.
Like what should we be doing to look out for our short term?
Yeah. This is what makes Danielle Smith's UCP different from every other governing party in Alberta history. Every other premier, including Jason Kenney, always had the goal of having support in Calgary, in Edmonton, and everywhere else. Right? And I'm sorry to offend folks that are in the everywhere else camp, but it's called the tripod of Alberta politics, right? But I knew things were different when she was on the campaign trail in the last election, and she was asked a question. So what's your strategy to win seats in Edmonton? And she said, "I don't have one. I don't need them." She literally said that, right? She said, "I need to pick up," and she went on in the interview and said, "I need to pick up a few seats in Calgary, enough to form a majority, and then I'll sweep the rural areas, and that'll be enough." This is what's called a minimum winning coalition.
Okay.
And Tom Flanagan is a strategist for the Harper government. He employed the same thing there. And it makes sense strategically because you're campaigning, you can focus resources on where you need to, but you also owe less to fewer people if you're not making big promises. And what it means is you can govern not for all of Alberta and in the interests of everyone, but rather in the interests of your base. So this was entirely predictable, and I'm not in the "I told you so" game, but we've been watching this slow process roll out over since she's become premier, even before.
Okay. Can we sort some, should we try to practice sorting some of the recent
using the buckets?
Events, using the 3 buckets? Jared, can you remind us the three rules?
Yeah. First is that we play by the rules and we don't change them to our own benefit, right?
Okay.
Second one is that the government makes itself accountable.
Okay.
Doesn't remove checks and balances on its power, but rather makes itself accountable. And now you're challenging me here to remember it. Third one is you govern for everybody. As we were just saying, you govern for everybody in the community, not just for your friends.
Okay. That last strategy you talked about seems like it goes against rule number 3, right? If someone who wants to be the leader of a province explicitly says, "I don't need the support of this group of people," I feel like that goes against feeling in the best interest of all people.
Which is so brazen to think about that. That you're just saying kind of like, "I don't care about you," like the huge part of your province. Like, "I don't care about you guys."
Yeah.
Is what you said. That's crazy.
You guys think of let's just name, what are some things lately going on? And then we'll maybe talk about how we would sort it or why it's concerning.
Do you want me to play professor here, or you want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Well, no, we just talked about the gerrymandering issue, so we could start there.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, if you're redrawing lines, I think, and it's to benefit you, you're changing the rules to benefit yourself. So is that the first bucket or second?
Third. Oh, first bucket. You're right. The first one. Well, it's kind of 1 and 3,
it's the
right?
third.
Because you're benefiting your friends by changing the rules.
I see.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
1 and 3.
Yeah.
It's funny how
Now I'm just blanking on everything that the government has done.
But
what about what happened to the teachers? What about the notwithstanding clause? What about that?
Yeah.
I'm not over it. Are you guys over it? No.
That'd be.
What does the notwithstanding clause do for the government?
Gives them kind of like an exception to withholding rights from people.
Yeah, and who does it cut out of the process?
The rest of government and voters, everybody.
The special interest group or whoever it is that it's being used against.
So when they pass the notwithstanding clause, what are they? They're preventing who from overseeing the legislation?
Oh, the union? No. I know I should know this.
Oh, man.
All right. We're
The assembly, like the people who are there to...
The courts.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
This is a matter of saying we know that this piece of legislation, in this case the Back to Work legislation, is going to fly in the face of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we don't want to allow the court to weigh in on that because we're recognizing that it does, and we're going to do an end run around the court. But by also using time allocation or closure, fancy word for saying cutting short legislative debate, holding it in the middle of the night while the premier's sitting in an airport lounge on her way to the Middle East on a private jet that's not paid for by anyone that we know. But no, what that's doing is circumventing, right, the courts and the legislature, 2 checks and balances on her power. So that's rule number Rule number two, right? Not making themselves accountable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also... Oh, go ahead.
I shouldn't have brought that up, and I'm all sad again. But
I know the lounge. I could very vividly see like the picture of him sitting, or Danielle sitting in the lounge.
I don't know.
Yeah. PTSD.
Yeah.
What about what they're doing to cities?
With the electoral districts, or
there's the gerrymandering there, right? And it is targeting cities more than anybody else. Although I would point this out, as one of my colleagues, Fio Snagowski, said recently, rural folks should be just as upset about being amalgamated with urban ridings as the other way around, because you're not going to get much attention if 90% of the riding is in an urban area. Right?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about their urban agenda. I said she doesn't have to win seats in Edmonton. Yeah. She doesn't feel like she has to. So that's why they're passing a law this fall that will allow them to rip up bike lanes. Right, even though Edmontonians, I'm from Edmonton. Yeah, I'm a cyclist. Full disclosure, but but Edmontonians love their bike lanes. Yeah. Some are upset about it, but they don't live in Edmonton.
And it's they're ripping them up, and they can't make new ones. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember getting to Red Deer years ago, and we had a bunch of bike lanes, and pretty quick they were taken
less
out.
than a year, maybe.
Yeah,
it was very short.
But that was Red Deer that made that decision, not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it wasn't the province coming in, right?
Right.
And then they made the elections in municipal politics. Now you're allowed to have parties where only in Edmonton and Calgary and nowhere else. Like there's a targeting that's happening here. Mm-hmm. It means that not everybody is being allowed to play by the same rules. Yeah. And they're not governing on behalf of everyone. They're governing on behalf of their people. Again, it sorts right into those buckets.
Okay, I don't know if this fits into buckets, but when they have an increased delivery of healthcare, like through private means rather than public, is that, well, I have a cynical response to which bucket that might fit in, but is that just it's going to benefit our friends, so that's going into the third bucket, or is there a different way to look at that?
Well, I mean, if we are to believe everything that's happening with the corrupt care scandal, it seems to be lining the pockets of folks that support their party, so it could fall in there. I think what I'm trying to do with this list is to actually push people away from the bread and butter policy discussions and to think about the rules of the game, right? And so I'm recognizing I'm sitting around 3 teachers on this one. So I told you folks too, my parents are both retired teachers.
Yeah.
I'm also, though, a parent of a special needs kid. And I can tell you that the language that the union was using around complexities in classrooms was a lot off-putting to me. And so from a policy perspective, we're in a kind room here, right? I can say it. From a policy perspective, I wasn't entirely upset that the teachers were going back to work. I wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And I have my own reasons for that, but that's a policy dispute.
Yeah.
I can still say that and say the way that they went about doing it was completely off base.
Totally
right?
agree.
The rules of the game were at stake.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get at here is not necessarily the policy decisions, but how the game is being played that needs to be challenged.
Yeah. And that's
sure. Yeah.
If this is bringing me back to those months, but I remember talking to people about the policy or talking about the issue on a policy level and not really getting anywhere. But then once I was able to say the same thing. Like I understood why we were being sent back to work. I knew it was going to happen, but I was disappointed or hurt by the way it happened.
Yeah.
But a lot of the people I talked to after that happened had no idea of the how it happened. They just knew that it happened, right? So our conversation a week before, which had been policy focused, we weren't getting anywhere. But then after it happened and I explained as best I could, which this conversation is making me realize that maybe I'm not as good at explaining as I thought I was, but the notwithstanding clause, they were like, oh, yeah, that does suck. Yeah. Like, that's not right.
Yeah.
And then that's where you make some ground at least.
I think
right?
So. And that's the whole thing about the notwithstanding clause and the use of closure is that it cuts short all of those discussions. Right? I mean, as a conservative, I could have made a case that the government didn't make for why it's important to separate collective bargaining from classroom complexity. There's an honest debate to have there. We didn't have it. We didn't have it in the courts, and we certainly didn't have it in the legislature. No. And that's to all of our detriment, right?
This maybe doesn't fit into what we're talking about, but I'm just curious because you seem like you discuss things with maybe MLAs, conservative people. Mm-hmm. Every time something happens, every time there's a new scandal or an issue that is just crazy to me or to you, what's the sense? Are they comfortable with all of it, or are they getting more concerned just in your conversations with conservative people?
Yeah, again, I've talked to them quite a bit.
Yeah.
Again, don't judge based on hearsay. Judge based on behavior. So in the next few weeks, you're going to see several high-profile UCP MLAs who will not re-up. They're not going to run for re-election. We've already had one, right? Schultz left. We're about to see another big one within days. And that suggests to me that these folks do not want to be associated with what is about to happen, whether it's a separation referendum or whether it's a corrupt care scandal that's about to boil over.
Okay.
And so, those of us that want to see the Democratic backsliding stop would go, does that really help? Because they're leaving. Like these folks, we don't see them. We don't see them in behind closed doors in caucus meetings. We don't see them in cabinet, and it's by design that we don't. So we don't know what case they're making there. But the fact
those might be the voices that are actually standing up to it.
This is what I'm saying.
Well, that's
right.
What I'm at. Yeah.
And the people that are left tend to be, so it's, the sycophants, right?
Even
that
more
are willing.
entrenched. Yeah.
And it's a hyper partisan cycle that we cover in one of our new books called No I in Team, where we looked at hyperpartisanship in Canadian politics.
Oh, cool.
And it's not just here in Alberta. Alberta's probably the clearest example of it, but this happens in a lot of places. Good people who are there for good reasons that would otherwise hold the government to account are simply not feeling like the culture is conducive to that. Right? Mm-hmm.
Jared, there's another article or project that you're working on called Common Ground. And Nate Pike, actually, he was on our last episode, he suggested that we ask you about it. So I'm going to do that right now. Can you tell us about Common Ground?
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. I mean, we started Common Ground in 2019, right after the federal election. That's when separatism really spiked for the first time. And we were motivated by the question, is Alberta really as conservative as everybody thinks it is? And so we have to break down that question.
Yeah.
So one way to look at it is through public opinion. We do surveys just like everybody else, and we can tell, for example, that about 15 to 20% of Albertans want to leave Canada, right? 15 to 20% consistently across all of our surveys dating back to 2019.
Like they want our province to leave.
Yep.
Okay.
Want to actually leave. Yeah.
So that's
Alberta
not a new sentiment. That's been around for a while.
Yeah, since 2019, it really is an uptick there, largely because folks kind of lost hope with forming a majority conservative government in Ottawa, right? And so we took that, and then we also thought, but that doesn't tell us the whole story. Because political culture is a bit different from public opinion. Political culture are the norms that define what is acceptable to say, do, or think in our political community. So in Alberta, is it okay to talk about separatism? Is it okay to be a separatist? These are questions that you don't get at through surveys. You have to go at it through different means. So we started doing some focus groups.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've been from one corner of this province to the other. Big cities like Edmonton and Calgary, small towns as small as Caroline. We did Caroline, Alberta. Hannah, St. Paul, a bunch of others. And we sit our folks down at the beginning of the focus group, and we give them a very simple task. We give them a white piece of paper and a Sharpie marker, and we ask them to draw us an Albertan.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And most people giggle like you did, right?
Yeah.
Because you're probably, if you're like 80% of our participants, you're going to draw somebody who's middle-aged, white, blue collar, right? Living in a rural area, right? And is typically named Joe. And so, like more often than not, people, when they draw them, talk about Joe.
Do you do any preamble? Like, do you say, because right away, those are similar things that I would draw, but I'd be aware that I'm drawing the stereotype.
Yeah, and that's actually very good. Yeah.
Okay.
And most people, the light bulb goes off, especially when they see the same guy being drawn by 8 people around the table.
Yeah.
We've done this, by the way, in, again, small towns, big cities. We've done it with all women, and they all draw Joe.
Okay.
We did one focus group in Lethbridge that was exclusively African immigrants, one of whom was only there for 10 days, and he drew a cowboy version of Joe, right? And so this vision is ubiquitous, unless you think that that's all that we do, and that's all that we do for the exercise. We actually have conversations about, is this stereotype actually accurate? But then we ask people to park their own personal opinions, which we could capture in surveys easily enough. Park your own personal opinions and tell us what you think Joe would say, do, or think in these different scenarios. Right? And by doing that, by saying, would Joe gets an invitation to a separatist rally, would Joe go? Right? That's my question to you, actually. It's a good one for you guys. If your stereotypical, average Joe Albertan got an invitation from his buddy, his next door neighbor, let's say, to go to a separatist rally, would he go? What do you think?
Maybe to learn a little bit more about what's being said.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been using the phrase separatism curious.
Yeah.
Like I think the average Albertan is separatism curious.
Yeah.
So they might go, but
Yeah.
I would tend to think that they would not go.
Okay.
I think they might be interested in curious, but I don't think they would actually have enough of an interest to go to an event.
So this is basically the type of conversation that we've been having, except I would have paid each of you $75 for an hour and a half to spend with us, right? Sorry. Right? But no, that was actually our big takeaway from last summer, was that Joe is now separatist curious. We actually use that phrase. I'm surprised you use it, because that's the terminology we use too, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big change, because when we were asking similar questions back in 2019, Joe wouldn't even entertain the idea. Now, at the same time, when we ask people flat out, is Joe a separatist? And by that we mean, would he cast a yes vote on a referendum? What do you folks think? So he might go to a rally, but...
Then I'd be more to no.
Okay.
Same, yeah.
I would say no.
Yeah, and why not?
I like to, or I just think the separatist movement is very visible. It's like we see them on the side of the road, or we did. But I don't think they represent a enough for me to call them the average, if that makes sense. Like there's just not enough in my opinion.
I think Joe is still a patriot.
Okay, yeah.
When it comes right down to it.
Yeah. And so when in these focus groups, we give them some videos to watch. We ask the participants, how would Joe feel when he watches Sidney Crosby score the golden goal in 20? We show them that.
Cool.
And we ask them, would he feel proud, neutral, or ashamed? And 98% of people say he would feel proud of that. And that actually is reflected in our public opinion data as well, where we show that, like, Albertans, when you ask them, are you Albertan? Are you Canadian? Are you some mix of these? And they say some mix of these, right? And so in a lot of other ways, Alberta's political culture, again, the norms of what it's acceptable to say, do, or think, as we define it through Joe. You tell us what Joe thinks is feasible or desirable and stuff, and I can tell you what the bounds of acceptability are, or what some people call the Overton window in our politics. And sometimes they're aligned, and they are quite aligned when it comes to separatism. Most Albertans are opposed to it, and they think that their neighbors are opposed to it. That's not like Brexit. We saw a gap open up in the closing months of that campaign, where people were still telling pollsters, yeah, I'm not going to vote to leave the EU, but I think my neighbor might.
Okay.
And so we're in the field now. We just got out of the field with a survey that shows that Albertans are still not predicting that there will be a yes vote in a separatist referendum. But we're going out in the field doing focus groups to ask, well, what would the typical Albertan, what would Joe say or do when it comes to separatism?
Were you personally surprised by that data? Like, you must have had an opinion of what you might find. So were you surprised by that?
Yeah, our hypothesis is that there's been so much change in Alberta since we went into the field first in 2019. Population has grown immensely. The economy has shifted. We've big changes at the federal government level. So we'd expect that those external factors, we had COVID, right? We had an oil crash. Those external factors should change the way people think about their communities. And so I would have expected to see more change than what we're seeing. But on the separatist question, it is important to understand that Joe has become separatist curious. The Overton window of acceptability and feasibility has shifted.
So it has shifted.
So now it's acceptable to talk about separatism.
Right.
And that is that's a necessary precursor to a yes vote, but it's not a sufficient condition, right? It doesn't mean that we're headed to a yes vote, but the space is opened up for it.
With a lot of the American rhetoric and the 51st state stuff that's been in the air for a couple of years now, or whatever it is, a year now, do you think that's common in the separatist viewpoint, where it's like not really about separatism, but it's more about the United States? Is that a factor in what you're considering, or?
Yeah, so our team doesn't just do focus groups and surveys. We actually attend separatist rallies.
Okay.
And we interview separatists. We've interviewed their leaders. We've monitored them on social media.
You should definitely have a podcast.
Well, yeah. We spend too much time in the field. But what we found at the rallies, just to give you one example, is if you go to a separatist rally, let's say at the Ledge Grounds in Edmonton, the crowd is divided. On one side of the plaza are people that have the American 51st state paraphernalia, Trump memorabilia and stuff. And on the other side is what I call the purist or the old school folks that are like separatists, want to be an independent country.
Okay.
Our surveys show that only about 1 in 5 committed separatists want to be the 51st state.
Okay.
They don't. The rest really want to be an independent country.
Okay.
Now, the reality is that wouldn't last for very long. In today's politics, we'd be swallowed up if we went independent in no time.
Yeah. But so you said 1 in 5 is roughly.
But 1 in 5 separatists, right? But separatists themselves are only about 1 in 5 Albertans.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That's lower than I would have maybe predicted, but yeah.
I love this common ground thing. Like, is there? You said you're not going to Red Deer this year?
Well, now you outed me, man. No, I nothing against Red Deer.
I kind of want you to plug. Like, is it something that our listeners can participate in?
Well, now I've just given it away for your listeners, right? So when we recruit folks, we want them to come in with not knowing what the first activity is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if folks are listening and they want to encourage family members to come out to it, you can go to commongroundpolitics.ca, and in the coming days we'll be announcing which towns we're going to, and you can encourage folks to go. But don't give away the premise.
Right.
No,
Okay.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
How big are the groups? Like, how many people are you reaching in a summer or whenever you do it?
About 175.
Okay.
Over a number of, over several communities. So it's not. I mean, that's still a lot of money. First of all, that's a lot of $75.
So what guides us? Like, what's the mission or the end goal with Common Ground?
We are there to help Albertans understand the difference between who they are as individuals and who they see themselves as a community. Because those are two very, very different things. For progressives in the province, I think they underestimate just how mainstream a lot of their policy views are, because they picture the typical Albertan being Joe, right? So when we ask Albertans in our Viewpoint Alberta surveys to place themselves on a political spectrum, they place themselves right in the middle, about 5.2 out of 10, like right in the middle. But when we ask them the follow-up question, where would you place the typical Albertan? They shifted an entire standard deviation to the right.
Really?
6.2. And so if you think about it, if you're a progressive or a moderate, if you overestimate the number of conservatives that you're surrounded by, it means you're less likely to voice opinions that you don't think are within the mainstream.
100%. Yeah.
Right? And in some cases, you're actually likely to punish people that you would otherwise agree with because you feel them to be radical, right?
Yes.
You can think of some folks in rural areas who look at their neighbor and see an NDP lawn sign. They might actually support the NDP, but they go, "Man, that's brave," right?
Yeah.
But if you get enough people to put up signs, you can start to see a little bit of a culture shift.
Yeah.
On the other side of the spectrum with conservatives, rather than being caught in a spiral of silence like progressives and moderates are in this province, they become overconfident. They overestimate the extent to which there's a conservative consensus in this province. And I would say that the Premier's office and the bubble that they find themselves in now are probably caught in that trap. They're probably overestimating the extent to which the population is open to these kinds of policies that they're rolling out.
I just like imagining, like even the few questions that we did here, and then had to explain why we thought Joe would act a certain way. Like we weren't exactly on the same page. I could imagine having a progressive and a conservative at the same table trying to explain why they drew Joe a certain way. And just that conversation being really powerful.
It actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, where you place yourself on the spectrum. You're more likely to see the typical Albertan being Joe, right? And when we went to Hannah's one of the smallest towns we've been to. I love that, home of Nickelback, right? I remember this group of seniors that was there for one focus group refused to believe me that people in Calgary were drawing just exactly the same thing that they were drawing in. So I went back out to the van, pulled in the pictures, and I said, "Here they are." And they just went, "They drew my son." But think about that, because for years she'd believed that the people in the cities don't care, don't understand, and that was a major shift for her. Now they're like, why was he drawing? Why were they drawing my son? Maybe my son has more influence than what I thought he did, right? And those are the kinds of questions that get surfaced by our research.
Often when we have a guest, like we kind of end with questions about like how can we look at this harmoniously, or how, what might that mean for us? But the work you're doing with Common Ground, I think, is just a perfect example of attempting to do that in real life, and I think applaud you for that. That's really awesome.
And the effort it takes to do that.
Oh man,
like it sounds like a lot.
Yeah, well, I got a great team.
Yeah.
Right. We've had over 40 graduate students working on this project
fantastic.
over the years, and they're the ones doing all the touring this summer, so I can spend time with my kids.
Oh, that's right.
How much are they like surprised by the results? The students who are running the focus groups. The first time they do it, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're not finding much that's new these days. Like we've reached what we call the saturation point, which itself is interesting. So we have to keep coming up with new probes and activities to try to shake the consensus, and we just can't do it. Right? Yeah.
Can you, on that, I agree, this is a very harmonious kind of direction that we're headed, but can you, like, do you have hope for Alberta? I think you do, but this is our time to talk about, like, why do you still have hope in Alberta?
Because we're having conversations like this.
Okay.
I mean, the four of us, I've never met you guys before this conversation here, and we found common ground, even though we probably disagree on policy issues that we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
But we can all agree on the fundamental rules of the game. We can all agree that's probably not the best thing, that when all of us sit down and imagine what it means to be Albertan, it looks a lot like the same person, and we're not visualizing, the single mom in Calgary. We can all agree that's probably not the best thing. We've had Joes, like guys that will step up and admit I'm a Joe, and even they are reluctant to think that the world should revolve around them, right? So I'm inspired by the level of consensus and common ground we're finding.
Okay, awesome. Are you good to stick around for one more segment?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Are you guys good to do one more
even if it means
too?
you're bearing your soul to us in a confession?
It's been years since I've given confession.
Forgive me, Father. Got it.
Forgive me, Father.
This segment is brought to you by Birdie Coffee. The team at Birdie Coffee is passionate about high-quality, locally made craft beverages. Enjoy a decadent latte, freshly roasted espresso, or something iced and delicious. Located in Red Deer, Alberta, Birdie Coffee Co. is a stop well worth making. But don't worry, if you aren't in the area, you can get their fresh roasted coffee beans delivered right to your door. Head to birdiecoffeeco.ca to learn more, or check them out at the Gasoline Alley Farmers Market, Thursday to Sunday.
Well, sometimes when you're with your buddies and your friends and your new friend, Jared, you just got to sit around at Blind Man Brewing and just take a moment, take a breath, and confess something. Get it off your chest. Become whole again, Chris.
It's going to help me.
And I'd like to see you become whole again.
Okay.
Why don't you start?
sometimes confessions can just be like admitting a pet peeve. So you can tell me if that's all this is. But I have been like violently angry at the amount I've had to use two-factor identification lately. I cannot stand it. I almost threw my computer through a window yesterday because I had been in and out of meetings, on phone calls, and every time I was away from my computer for more than 10 seconds, it would time out. I had to get on, then use my phone to get on. Then for some reason, Google was doing that. So it was asking me to I forget what their little phrase is. It isn't like check your identity. It's something slightly different. Yeah. So then I re-logged into my Gmail on my Chrome browser, and then it redirected me to my phone. So there was just kind of like a moment going back and forth. I was so frustrated. And like, I still get my password stolen because some jerk used it with, I don't know. Anyway, I've been pwned. You know that website? Have you been pwned?
No.
I'm still on there. You can tell if your password's ever been stolen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's actually how they steal it.
You check that. You've been pwned again.
You make an account on pwned.
Anyway.
I just like how technology is always getting better.
Two-factor.
You know, it's always getting better. Everything works better.
It's the enshittification of
no doubt.
Technology is the two-factor identification.
I gotta get the bleep button out again. Thanks, Chris. For that.
Please do. Can you bleep me? I don't know if I've ever been bleeped.
That's actually. Oh, go ahead. Actually, no. I have something about that. Like that.
Oh.
That's actually an obstacle. We've talked about getting like flip phones or dumb phones. That is an obstacle to getting one. Is that you need your smart device. To even just log on to your work.
Like you computer. Can't get onto your work.
So then you end up carrying around a dumb phone and a smartphone just so you can do all the other.
Well, they gave us like like an option to get like a fob with a button, so I didn't want it on my phone.
Oh yeah.
So now
you have the fob.
I have the fob on my keychain.
Oh.
For what? Two-factor identification.
Yeah. So you hit the button and a code appears, and then you use that. Mm-hmm. Of course, when I forget my keys at home, I am completely.
So this is like a pager, kind of like it shows
It's just a small little screen. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want that, but that's interesting.
I didn't want either, but...
Where are your keys? Can you show me
my
later?
school keys I don't have with me. I'll show you later. It'll be really fun when I show you. Do you want to go with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Before recording here, I was frantically trying to set up some hammocks that I purchased for my wife. The plan was for Mother's Day. They came one day late.
In fact, you recommended this.
Sitting in a hammock is a recommendation, yes. But my confession is that I'm terrible with knots. And before coming here, I was trying to set up the hammocks. There's going to be a little cluster, like 3 hammocks. So I had them all tied up, and then I went to sit in one and tested it out, and just straight to the ground.
You know, you can ease into it. Hey, you don't have to just...
I did, so it didn't hurt. Like,
okay.
no injury on that one. I eased in, and just like the knot slipped. So I tried again, fell again, and I'm looking around. It's, I don't know, 6 p.m., nice evening. There's people around. I'm sure people saw me out there struggling. And then I tied a new knot. I was on my phone looking up how to tie the right knot. And then I was tugging on just the carabiner on the knot, and it slipped, and I wasn't in the hammock, but I fell backwards, almost did like a backwards somersault in my yard. I was looking around. My kids didn't see. No one saw it, but it's my confession. I'm terrible. And I was so frustrated.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I wanted to get this done before coming here. Had them all set up, but I knew the knots were not safe. So I didn't want to.
So your kids are just lying in a bloody heap at home.
When I get home, they're just going to just.
That is how my daughter broke her collarbone was from a hammock fall.
Oh.
So no laughing matter.
Okay, I apologize for making
that was user error.
It was set up. She flipped and fell out. It was not. Yeah. You know when kids get hurt and like they say they're in pain, you're like, oh, you're fine. She wasn't fine that time.
She was broken.
But thanks, Ty. Speaking of kids, I think my stress watching my son, this is my confession, stress watching my son play his first game of baseball gave me a migraine.
Oh.
Like legit migraine. Because I was so nervous for him. Like he's never played baseball before. Right. He really wanted to. And it's his first at-bat ever. And we practiced so much. And he struck out his first time up, right? And he was swinging a miss, and you could see it in his face. He was frustrated. And my son takes losses pretty tough, so he did okay. But then the second time, my heart was just like pounding. Everyone's just enjoying the day, and not me. Like I'm so, and I'm like pacing around the field like crazy. Like everyone else is talking to other.
That's
parents.
not helping anybody.
I'm like a bull, and I'm also nuts because we're recording this weekend. So I was practicing my singing. So I was kind of singing around the outer edge of the baseball field while pacing around like a crazy person. Anyway, he struck out again. And didn't have a great game. And as I was driving home, I started seeing the spots, before I used to get migraines as a kid. I haven't got one in a long time. Yeah, I had a migraine that night. Was up all night with a headache.
Wow.
And that's my confession, is that I think my stress from my kid playing a baseball
you
game.
just
Strike him
next game
out.
out.
Stress you out.
He played again yesterday, and he went 2 for 2. Got an RBI. I was so proud of him.
Nice.
No migraines. So I'm all better now.
Sweet.
Very sweet.
Jared, do you have a confession for us?
I do. I have a habit apparently of confessing things on podcasts. So I went on Nate Pike's Breakdown podcast one time, and I confessed to being a conservative, which blew away many people.
Yeah.
Because apparently you can't be both a critic of this government and also be a principled conservative.
I'm so glad you can.
Right?
I'm so glad.
So there's room for that. So today I'm gonna confess something even deeper.
Even deeper than that?
Even deeper than that. Guys, I'm an Albertan.
Oh boy.
We gotta hit the bleep button again.
And I wonder, and I don't think I'm the only person that struggled to say that. I mean, a lot of us are from away. I mentioned off the top that I celebrated my Alberta anniversary. I spent more time in this province than anywhere else. Yeah. But a lot of us, especially when we see the politics happening right now, are really reluctant to feel like we're Albertans. And I think some of you were talking about flags and so on last episode, and I challenge listeners to think about when they see an Alberta flag flying from the back of a pickup truck. How does that make you feel? And how did it make you feel during the convoy when we saw Canadian flags being flown upside down and right side up? And so I often find myself talking with groups of people, and I ask people to come up to me after the talk, and I say, "Hey, are you an Albertan?" And a lot of them will say, "Yeah, I'm from Alberta." And I'll stop them and I go, "That's not what I asked. I asked you, are you Albertan?" Because a lot of us feel a lot of mixed feelings about being from this place, and we're not ready for some reason to own up to being Albertan. But until we do, I don't think we're going to expand the definition of what it means to be Albertan to include all the folks that we talked about on this episode. Right? I remember coming home from a separatist rally, and I was wearing a nice button. I have it back in my van, but it said, "I am Albertan," and this is something that the separatists were handing out, and one of my RAs snagged one for me. So I was wearing this. I was walking back up from the ledge downtown Edmonton, which I don't need to tell you is not exactly separatist territory. And as I was walking by, some young couples were whispering about me, and I goes a separatist, right? It goes a separatist. And so finally, I said to one of them, "I'm actually not a separatist. I'm an Albertan. I'd like to be a proud one soon. Wouldn't you like to join me in that?" And we had a really good conversation about how until we start, taking back the flag, until we start talking about how being Albertan is more than simply going in lockstep with what the government is doing on democratic backsliding, we're not going to get anywhere. And so that's my confession.
Kind of a call to arms too. I like it.
Yeah.
They really snuck that in there, hey?
That was good, yeah. I'm a part of a group in Lacombe that was inspired by one of a previous article about a holiday plan for restoring Alberta's democracy. And you have 10, 12 kind of steps or part of the recipe, ingredients. And that was the one that I struggled with. It was identify as an Albertan. And I get it, but I'm not there yet. I can't confess it. I'm not.
And
you can confess that you're
born and raised, but I have a hard
That's
time
right.
saying it.
You are too.
No, you're the only one not. You're the only one born here, Ty.
Yeah.
Where are you born? Man,
that was great confession, and great having you on the whole.
Yeah.
episode.
Thanks for having me down,
Really
guys.
appreciate
Do
it.
again
It's
sometime.
been great.
really appreciate that. Yeah.
Do you have anything? You have a Substack. Do you want to plug that? What's it called?
Yeah, Decoding Politics is my personal Substack, and then Common Ground Politics also has its own Substack that speaks to our research. So folks are more than welcome to join us there. Subscribe. We won't spam you, I promise. And we like to hear from folks too. We get a lot of comments that we will interact with, and so encourage folks.
Highest Harmonious Gentleman recommendation for your Substack. It's fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
That's great.
For sure. Yeah. Well, if you want to get in touch with us,
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
like new listener Mike.
New listener Mike sent an email to harmoniousgentleman@gmail.com, and we appreciate it. He might have signed up for our Substack,
oh, I'm sure he did.
which is
Harmoniousgentleman.substack.com.
that's right.
And
it's easy to find.
Yeah, it's easy.
It's like the only thing that comes up now when you Google
and
us.
we don't get the engagement that Decoding Politics does, but we do get the occasional comment.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love seeing comments there. I don't reply to them, but I would love it if our listeners
nice.
replied to each other.
That
Have
would
some
be great.
conversations. Yeah.
I handed out a pin to listener Shelley personally.
Oh, that's good.
Because she requested one,
asked for
even in an email.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I put it right in her hand yesterday.
Yeah.
It's on her bag.
I teach a digital music class, and I had an assignment where I had them make me an advertisement
What?
for my own podcast.
That's amazing.
And so I gave them the brands that sponsor us, and I said, "You do the research.
Really?
You make
That's a great
script,
assignment.
You make the music. You record the audio." And they're working. So the idea was maybe.
And unfortunately, they're all terrible, or
some are quite good.
okay.
But I
Oh, they're just not done.
So actually, I want to show you guys some of them eventually. Some of them I maybe want to use one actually.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I gave out some merch.
How
as
fun for a
prizes and
kid!
stuff.
Like they can.
And yeah, it was, I mean,
You're
I-
so famous now.
I
Your
I
ad
overestimated
is
how
on a real
much students
podcast.
would want to make podcasts. Right? Like I think they're awesome and a lot of
Underestimated or overestimated?
students- I thought they would be more into podcasts
I
than
gotcha.
they really are. But the ads, they kind of like making those. So, and some are pretty funny. Some are inappropriate, and
Could be in our Patreon. That's behind a paywall.
some are not appropriate. And when you're a teacher, you really want to laugh and say "nice job," but I couldn't. I was like, "That's not appropriate." But
You got to
good
delete
job.
that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been great, you guys. Thanks, and thanks, Blind Man, for hosting us. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
What a guy.
What a guy.
Yeah. Send us out, Chris.
You guys, I don't know what to do. So, thanks for everything. On?
That's the worst whatever.
I wasn't ready for that.
We're called the Harmonious Gentleman Podcast.
And we'll see you
That's
next time.
Okay.
Harmonious gentlemen.